Hi, I'm Kyle from Gun Gamers, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Mantis X. Mantis reached out to us and sent us this and says, hey, we think you're really going to like this. We want you to review it. And we said, sure, let's do it. I've always been an avid pistol shooter. It's never been a natural skill set to me. It's been something that I've learned. I'm not a naturally good pistol shooter. Anyone who's seen me when I first got, this was my first gun ever, was my Glock 19. When I first started shooting that, oh boy, it was bad. I couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with it. Pistols are hard to shoot, surprise. But I got better over time. I took a mag pull class. I've had this for about 5 years now. And then they sent us this and I said, yeah, let's give it a try, because when I go to the range, I notice I'm not making huge market improvements with just doing on my own. I'm staying consistent, but I'm not moving up. So they sent us this, and this is the Mantis device itself. It's very easy to take on and off. Literally just hand tighten thread right there. And it can be mounted on a variety of pistols. You do need a rail system though to mount it. If that is one change I wish Mantis would make, even if it was a la carte accessories, I would love if I could mount this on a bunch of really small guns, like off of the trigger guard or something like that. Because if I could do that, I could practice with my carry guns more and learn the mistakes I make with those. Because smaller guns are harder to shoot. That said, a ton of guns on the market have rails. Like tactical is everything right now. Everything's tactical. So I went and we tested this. I went to a range and I set the ranges. They were exact. There was no wind. There was no weird things going on. So what I did first is I decided to take this gun. I was not running the ported barrel. I was running the factory barrel. This is a factory trigger in it. And I decided to do a 10-shot group. The grouping here you can see is about 4 inches because it spans from about here to here is the longest grouping. So then I decided to go through and start doing tests using the Mantis X, listening to the feedback it was giving me, trying to figure out, is this thing gonna really help me beyond the, because on the dry fire practice, I saw improvements, but how does that translate in the real world is what I was curious. This is my first grouping. It's much, much tighter, but it's also, this has a longer sight radius, and it has a slightly softer trigger on it. But you're still at about 2.5 inches, 2 3/4 inches here on this grouping. You can see it's about there to there. But I noticed something. I had a consistent grouping, but as sure as you saw, it was to the left. So then I tried it again. Now I had some drifting here, but I was real consistent. If you can see, it just goes right along here like this, and pretty much all the bolt holes are touching each other like in a giant train. Consistency, again, I was getting in the mid 80s here, again, but they were all to the left. Then I slowed down again, and I got it back down to the original grouping, but it's still to the left. When I had originally taken a Magpul course, I said to the instructor, I swear to God, this thing is shooting to the left. He takes it, and normally, 90 times when a shooter is shooting to the left, they're shooting low left, and they're saying, yeah, it's the shooter jerking the trigger, and that's what's gonna happen. And that's what this, you know, if you jerk the trigger with this thing, it says that. But I wasn't getting those readings, and I was still shooting to the left. And I was like, is my sight picture wrong? Are my eyes messed up that I can't see that? That can't be the case. So then what I decided to do, and I said, you know what, let's go back to a control. I don't have the device on it, but let's take the Glock 26 again. Let's run another grouping. My grouping shrunk by like 20%. Which in gun shooting, that's a substantial difference. And also, they're all centerized, which is the group, every other grouping before that with the Glock 19, it's not. So the Mantis confirmed that I'm not crazy, and this gun actually does shoot to the left, which that saves me a lot of frustration, which I've shot a lot of rounds at I've probably shot more rounds in frustration out of this thing, wondering why I am not running where I'm pointing it in money than the cost of this thing. I really should have got one of these sooner. So
the Mantis helped you diagnose a gun issue.
The Mantis helped me, it's not designed to, but it helped me diagnose a gun issue. A limitation though is it can't tell you if your sight picture is off. It'll tell you if you're on sight, you know, if you're on sight picture and you screw it up, it'll tell you. But if you're just off sight picture and then you pull the trigger, it won't tell you that. But generally, if you've been shooting a little bit, pretty easy to diagnose. I found the errors that it threw, like slapping the trigger, squeezing the gun too hard, all that kind of stuff. Those were really on point, because this thing now I know when I do a bad shot, I can feel it. As soon as I pull the trigger, I know that I screwed up, and I check that feedback, and 99% of the time it's saying, yep, that's exactly what you did. And that's very helpful to me. It's not the same as going to a instructor class, because there's a little more that they can do there. But the cost of, like, say 500 rounds of 9mm or even less of anything else that you shoot as pistol ammunition, it pays for itself real quick. You know, if you're a 3-gun shooter, I'm not sure how much it'll help you if you're a high-end 3-gun shooter, but for 95% of us, this has some serious abilities and it will pay for itself, especially if you like to go shooting and you're willing to say, hey, I'll look at the results. I'll say, you know what, either I'm doing this right or I'm not doing this right, and you'll listen to its feedback. It's going to improve your shooting. Now, it's not as good as a class, but in terms of value, it's better value than a class. You know, it'll help round out a lot of basic problems, and I think that's worth it. Is this thing worth your money? I would say so. Even for Airsoft, it helps. I'd say the returns on Airsoft are much more limited. I mean, what would you say? Because you did a lot of dry firing.
I'll get in here.
Yeah, get in here for this Airsoft bit.
All right. Hi, Mantis. I'm the guy you actually sent this to. So I did practice with it with Airsoft, and with Airsoft, it's a little bit more limited just because you're not going to often be doing very precise target shooting with Airsoft. Airsoft is a kind of a competition shooting environment. I used it for Airsoft because I don't have my New York State pistol permit, so as a result, I'm not supposed to even touch handguns. So I was limited to using it for dry practice with Airsoft. I'm a rifle and shotgun guy. You can use the Mantis on rifles and shotguns, but I feel like the application there is a little more limited. Rifles and shotguns, your fundamentals are pretty easy on that, I feel like. But for the Airsoft side of things, it does help, because if you are trying to, let's say you're doing Airsoft 3-gun, I know that's getting bigger out in California, or let's say that you're a speed softer who runs pistols a lot, like let's say Amy. So if you want to have something that you can dry practice with, because dry practice is something that you can do a lot with Airsoft, this is sensitive enough, and the app does have a setting for dry practice that works with Airsoft. It is sensitive enough for that, and it has a setting for CO2 or Airsoft guns.
Yep.
And it does work with green gas guns too. And it is sensitive enough, and it does generally pick it up.
If you're gonna do a ton of dry fire practice, the one thing to be aware of, I mean, it helps. Absolutely, it helps. Mantis thing, it's great, love it. But you have to be aware, occasionally you are gonna get misreadings, so when you go to rack the gun for your next dry fire, sometimes it will set it off. Mm-hmm. And that's just a limitation because you're playing with such minute forces. I'm not surprised that happened. Just be aware that that may occasionally happen, but as far as I'm concerned, at its price point, total non-issue.
Yeah, and it comes with like a little Pelican case too, which is kind of awesome.
Yeah, nice little case.
So you're not going to damage it on the way to the range. The battery life is pretty good too.
Yeah, I agree. It's real quick to charge.
Yep.
Good battery life.
It interfaces well with Android or iOS.
Yep. I mean, the only negative thing I have to say about this is I wish I could mount it to more of my guns. That is literally it. So, awesome product, Mantis. I like it. I think it's absolutely worth the money. And I think if you do a lot of pistol shooting in Airsoft, it actually is worth the money there. Because for the cost of like less than 3 green gas mags on a pistol,
yeah,
you can do a ton of training.
So if you're trying to be competitive, I think it pays for itself there.
Correct.
But you know, if you're trying to increase your shooting for self-defense purposes, absolutely worth it. If you're trying to increase your shooting for competitive purposes, absolutely worth it. And I think it crosses into a variety of markets with those two purposes. It just helps you work your fundamentals. There's no downside to it.
I agree. It's a great product. I've actually, thanks for sending it, Mantis. I almost bought one before you sent us, so that's cool. No, absolutely. You know what? I was interested in it before it was sent over, and I definitely would recommend it.
I would absolutely recommend you buy one of these.
Yeah.
If you are looking to improve your pistol shooting and you're willing to pay the price point for it, which I think it's 100 or 150. I'll just put that here.
Yeah.
I just think it pays for itself. Absolutely. In the quality of the feedback that you get and the training that you get. It is in some ways better than an instructor because it knows exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
But in other ways it is more limited. It can't tell you things like body positioning, reload, all that other stuff.
Yeah.
So supplement it with live fire instructed training.
Correct. And it does give a ton of data. There's different modes that you can do. I mean,
yeah. This is just one tool in the toolbox.
Yeah.
It's a damn good one.
It's a really good one, and it's at a good price point.
Yep. So I think that's about...
That's it. I mean, I don't even think there's any competitors on there in the market, is there?
I don't think there's any other device that does what this does.
No.
and certainly not one that does it as well.
No, I'm unaware of any, because I remember it came out 2015?
I think it was at SHOT 2016. Because,
was it SHOT 2016?
Yeah, because I remember Robo was going to see those guys.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Robo
so
loves his too.
Robo loves his. Brain Exploder loves his. They've actually sent a bunch to like a bunch of people we know.
Yeah.
Mantis did a marketing push with these, but you know what? The product is fucking good. So.
Yep. And we will shit all over anything that is not good, because we don't care. But this is actually good.
Yeah, you know what? We wouldn't say it was good if it wasn't, but it just is. That's what you come to us for.
Yep.
All right, I think that about covers it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'm Kyle.
I'm E-House. Peace.
All right, one little thing to add in. I'm not sure when we're going to splice this in, but I've kind of gained a reputation of talking terrible about nearly everything that I review, about how all the problems that it has. This is the first thing that I've had next to no complaints about, so good job, Mantis.